So we're saying, why wouldn't the New Testament prophecies and some of the Old Testament prophecies about the second coming and the Antichrist and all that also be fulfilled literally?
But academics claim prophecy isn't the point of apocalyptic literature.
Apocalyptic literature is really not written to tell you the future. That may sound a little shocking. People read apocalyptic literature in order to try to understand their present situation, why things are not going right for the right people.
Is the book of Daniel history or prophecy? Is it encouragement to the oppressed Jews of the 2nd century BC, or the work of a visionary about the end of time? The debate is typical of the controversy that swirls around many of the Bible's apocalyptic texts, and nowhere is that controversy more heated than in the New Testament's book of Revelation. The book of Revelation comes to us across millennia, a text teeming with bizarre images of sea beasts and 7-headed monsters.
You'll have beasts in the Revelation of John, and the mystic numbers and various fantastical creatures and all the rest of it, dreams and visions.
As in the book of Daniel, the word Antichrist never actually appears in Revelation. In fact, Antichrist only shows up 5 times in the entire Bible, in 2 epistles traditionally ascribed to John the Apostle, but probably written by his disciples. But for those seeking prophecy, Revelation represents God's most forceful communication about the Antichrist and the end times. Like the book of Daniel, some of the strongest imagery in Revelation has to do with a beast, one whose real identity, believers say, is the Antichrist.
The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies.
He's going to be charismatic, he's going to be well-liked, he's going to be persuasive, he's going to be spiritual, he's going to be insightful, and he will encourage everybody with hope.
And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation.
Surely the world would hail him and honor him and respect him, and at the end worship him.
No one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast, or the number of his name, 666.
He is going to require people to receive that number, and what I think it is a prefix that is added to their individual number. For instance, my Social Security number.
While believers see the Antichrist in such passages, many scholars argue that Revelation is not so much about the future as the past, and it can only be understood in historical context. It is believed that Revelation, the last book of the Christian Bible, was written during the 1st century reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian.
It's no longer the community of Jews, but the community of Christians who are being persecuted by the Roman Empire.
So if something is to happen in society, say an earthquake, a famine, economic failure, whatever, it was very easy for someone in society then to blame it upon the Christians.
They saw the Antichrist everywhere in the culture. They saw the Antichrist telling them, in order to serve in the Roman army, you had to literally worship the statue of the emperor.
Deliverance, meanwhile, was not forthcoming. New Testament texts, like Thessalonians, had prophesied that Christ would return within the lifetime of 1st century readers. Those prophecies were not fulfilled.
It's now 2 generations since the death of Jesus, and the end hasn't come. The Antichrist helps explain why the end hasn't come. There's still demonic forces at work.
It is in this context of perplexity and doubt about the second coming of Jesus that John of Patmos wrote the book of Revelation around 95 AD. Exiled on the Greek island of Patmos for preaching the gospel, John addressed Revelation to 7 Christian churches in Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey.
Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up from out of the sea.
And we find out that one of the administrators of Satan's work here on earth is the beast from the sea.
And of course, the Hebrew people never became seafaring people. They were a land-based culture. Anything that came from across the sea was foreign, and it was suspicious. It was usually evil.
One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast.
It points specifically to the Roman Emperor Nero, who is believed to have committed suicide and who is then identified with this head that has this wound. Nero, of course, is a very notorious figure in the Greco-Roman world.
Nero's wound was self-inflicted. He stabbed himself to death in the neck in 68 AD. But 4 years earlier, he gleefully embraced the Antichrist role, nailing Christians to crosses, feeding them to lions, and burning them at night in his gardens.
Nero blamed the Christians for the burning of Rome and tied people to poles and poured oil over them and used them as lighting, and just terrible things that he did.
So powerful and terrifying was Nero that some believed he would rise Christ-like from the dead.
There is a trajectory of understanding this text that Nero would return, as Jesus Christ was expected to return.
More than implicating just Nero, scholars argue that many passages in Revelation are also primarily about Rome.
John uses three primary symbols to bring out what is really wrong or evil about Roman society as he sees it. And the first one, the sea beast. This portrays the coercive power of military and political might, which was bearing down upon the Christians at the time.
Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon.
The second form of evil that he sees is when religion is used in support of the evil state. And he uses this as the earth beast, and this would be also referred to later in the book as the false prophet. So it's religion used in a false sense.
If you're being asked to go into the town square and put incense on a little altar and say, "Hail to God Caesar," but you don't believe that Caesar is a god, you've got a real problem there.
No one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast, or the number of his name, 666.
And then the third form of evil is economic seduction, which obviously that can place a tremendous amount of coercive power upon people. That if you didn't go along with Rome, then you couldn't buy or sell.
On some of the official Roman documentation, there may have been imperial slogans that were necessary for doing commerce in antiquity. The number of the beast, 666. Scholars today believe that that's the numeric value for the name Nero Caesar in Greek.
Clearly, it's possible to read Revelation as an indictment of Roman power, or more prophetically, as evidence of a coming Antichrist. But is there another way to interpret this text?
I think Revelation could be understood as presenting us with a deep symbolic contrast between good and evil within ourselves. That is, these kinds of symbols live and ask us to question how good and evil relates to our own activities.